Just a helpful hint for any listeners that may have kiddos around. These are conversations between adults intended for adults. There is the potential for some adult subject matter or adult language.
Hello, my friends. This is Danielle Ireland, and you are listening to Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. In this show, I talk about journaling a lot, and that is because, well, frankly, I believe in it. I believe in journaling. I believe in the art and the practice of sitting down with yourself and getting really acquainted with your own thoughts and feelings. No one knows you better than you, no matter what the expert is, no matter what the topic. You know yourself better than anybody else. And the best way to tap into that wisdom that I have ever found is journaling. Click the link in the show notes and grab a copy of The Treasured Journal. It's a journal made with you in mind. Today, we are going to talk about when things don't go as planned. That's right, when things don't go as planned. I have a few questions I'm going to share with you that I don't really know if I have solid answers to, but they're really great questions that clients have asked me. So I'm going to explore them thoughtfully as best as I can, and also share a recent experience I had where this was my story. Things didn't go as planned and how I messed up, what I hopefully learned from it, and how we can all grow and get better at this together. What are we getting better at? I think we're getting better at letting things fall apart so that we can actually move through the experience rather than gripping onto that's not what the plan was. So I need to hold on to it. Yeah, we're going to hopefully by the end of this time together have a better sense on how to do that. At least, God, I hope I can do that. So here is what I think, if I could bullet it down to the compilation of what makes this so challenging, or what are the things that come up for us when things don't go as planned? There's a combination of expectations, listening and or lack of listening, and trust. I'm going to break that down a little bit more as we continue here. So expectations, listening, and trust. Those were the big themes that came up from my recent experience. So this is essentially what happened. Let me just start there. Here's what happened. I decided that I was going to take a solo retreat. And for those of you who are maybe new to the podcast who don't know what a solo retreat is, I have just recently released a listener's favorite with a dear friend of mine, Jen Petro, who taught me about personal retreats, solo retreats. I've dedicated 2 episodes to it. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend you visit or revisit that to kind of get caught up on what I thought I was doing, because I've done this, I'll say successfully, if you can measure success in the sense of feeling good afterwards. I've done this successfully a few times now. So I thought for sure, I was like, I've got this in the bag. Yeah, I'm going to do a solo retreat. My intention was, because I'm doing a lot of traveling this year, I didn't necessarily want to not be home with my husband or my daughter. I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay home and I'm going to spend the mornings and evenings with my daughter and my husband. And it's going to be like this great, cozy, family time. But then during the day, it's like a staycation, stay retreat where I journal, I meditate, I contemplate goals, I look at the rest of the year, and I create a vision for the rest of the year. There's been some changes in my business, and I'm going to really contemplate all of those things. And then, what else did I think I was going to do? I was going to get ahead in 4 weeks of content in my marketing. I was going to get ahead and batch a bunch of podcasts. I was going to write an outline for a book idea. And then there were also things, believe it or not, that were sort of on my backup list that if I found extra time, which is comical now, if I had extra time, that maybe I would dip my toe in and play around with some of these other ideas too. I think if you're listening to this point, you can probably already see, well, and I guess in the title of this podcast, it's kind of giving it away, but you can see maybe where the flaw was in my plan that I couldn't see at the time. And so I was going to accomplish all of these beautiful creative things, give myself lots of nourishing self-care. I had a facial and acupuncture scheduled. I had a massage scheduled. I was going to work out every day. I was also going to have a date night with my husband. So I was going to do it all. Basically, that was my plan. My plan, the expectation, go back to the expectations. The expectation was I'm going to do it all and I'm going to feel great and refreshed and energized for the weekend when I come out of it. And I'm going to start the next week back in full swing at work, feeling just like I've got a great plan. I've taken care of myself and now we're back in life. Here we go. When I say that that wasn't what happened, what I mean is like none of that is what happened. So now we'll move into the listening phase of when things don't go as planned. I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to my own bullshit. I didn't hear the nonsense of what I was setting myself up for. I don't think I was really in my body. I was living in a story where I could do more. And this is where I even get tripped up, but I know I'm not alone in this. It's not that I wasn't or am not capable of doing any of the things that I had intended to do. The element in this plan and my expectation, it's usually my Achilles heel every time, and it certainly was this time, was the actual time and amount of energy that goes into doing any one of those things that I set up to do. I have kind of magical thinking when it comes to time management. And I think that that is definitely room for growth for me as a person. And also an element to my personality is that the more rigid and planned my life is, the more constraints I have, the more stifled I feel. My sweet spot is having a block of time and intentions for that time, but not having every minute planned. And because I didn't have trust in the process, because it wasn't a process that I should put trust in, I just became really rigid in my planning and in my thinking. So now how did the plan devolve, fall apart, and blow up? It started off with, and this, any one of these points could have been an opportunity for me to really sit in the reality of what is present in my situation, assess, reassess, and create kinder goals and expectation. But I didn't know that at the time. I couldn't see it at the time. Oh, and that's not what happened. So what happened, my daughter got hand, foot, mouth. And we didn't know it was hand, foot, mouth until like Sunday or Monday. It just started off like on Friday to look maybe a little bit like a diaper rash. And it was not. Flash forward, we find out Monday she needs to be sent home because of hand, foot, mouth. And one of the rules for those of you who either don't have kids or never experienced, because I wouldn't have known until it was me, it creates these little blisters on their little tushy and sometimes on their feet and sometimes on their hands, sometimes around their mouth or in their mouth. Thankfully, there were none on her face. But until all of these little boo-boos have essentially scabbed over, she can't go back to daycare. So she was homeward bound for my retreat week. When I say that like the tension, my blood pressure, if I was hooked up to like a blood pressure monitor this past week, the week of this retreat that didn't happen, I don't know what my blood pressure would have been, but I know it went up. So this was sort of like the first fork in the road where the vision that I had set for myself, the fantasy that I had really fallen in love with, and then the reality of what this week was going to be. This was the first real fissure point, and I just wasn't ready to let go. So we skip forward. I get a lot of help. My husband and I get a ton of help from my mother-in-law, from my mom. My husband also was like a huge champion for me to make this week happen. So I was like, all right, we're still making it work. This is just another phase of life. We're just going to make it work. We're trucking along. Then at some point between Monday and Wednesday, this is all happening between Monday and Wednesday. At some point between Monday and Wednesday, my husband gets sick. And so I'm stepping in and filling in more gaps. And then by Wednesday, my dog, my almost 15-year-old lab, has a stroke and ultimately gets put down. It was in the room, and I'm probably skipping important stories. All of the beautiful self-care that I had scheduled, every appointment needed to get rescheduled or changed for some reason, albeit all incredibly legitimate reasons. So everything was falling apart. It was like sand slipping through my fingers. And I wasn't letting it go. I just wasn't letting it go. I wasn't throwing up my hands saying, this isn't the time. This isn't the place. This just isn't going to happen. I had a sick baby, a sick husband. I wasn't sick yet, but that was coming for me too this week. And I'm in I when I finally started to listen, which maybe that's giving me too much credit to say that I was actually listening. It was in the vet's office with my husband and I holding our dog, knowing what's coming, and we are heaving sobs. I mean, like just gaping, gasping for air, snotty, goopy sobs. This dog, to give a little backstory, if you've listened from the beginning of season 1, you've heard her yelp and bark in the background because I couldn't figure out how to wrestle dogs and do audio at the same time for a long time. But anyway, her name is Sydney. Her name is Sydney, though she's no longer with us. And so Sydney has been a very special love slash, I'm sure we all have either people or pets or relationships in our lives where it's like, God, I love you so fiercely and you drive me crazy. This was that little fur baby teacher for me. I could dedicate, actually, maybe I should dedicate a whole podcast to Sydney, just in honor of Sydney. But it was the middle of my retreat. I was still white knuckling it, blood pressure high, sick daughter, sick husband. No plans are coming together. And because I'm mentally exhausting myself trying to hold everything together in my plan, I also had no bandwidth for anything creative. So I had done nothing. I had accomplished no things, no marketing, no podcasting, no nothing. And I'm here on the floor with my husband and my sweet, kind, dying dog. And I go from sobbing to hysterical laughing because it just, in that moment, I saw the ridiculousness. It was like, it took that sort of poignant, sad experience of saying goodbye to a pet and being in that moment to wake up to my own nonsense. And I was laughing for so many things. I was laughing for of course, this is how Sydney would go of it all. Like, of course, this is how she would exit. Of course it was. And the thing that I could spare some details, but I think it's just actually funny to share. And you can skip ahead and do the 15-second skip if you don't want these details. But the part of her brain where she had the stroke also caused her to eliminate fluids out of everything. And I'll leave it there, but everything. So all over this particular room in the house is this mess. And so it's grieving, it's fear, it's gross, it's all of this stuff. I mean, it's just so bad and so messy. And in the midst of that mess and that grief, I just laughed and I felt my body let it go. Finally, it's like if you've been white knuckling in traffic, maybe because you're either tense or worried about running late. And then you finally arrive or the traffic starts to move and you feel yourself kind of back into the flow of where you're trying to get to, and your hands just like you didn't realize how tight you were gripping because they're like cramped. That is essentially what happened emotionally. I let the plan go. And thankfully, and I'll just add for anyone listening who's a pet lover who also may have been worried about like, well, what was your husband thinking while you were laughing hysterically? Thankfully, truly, he saw the humor in it in that moment. So, and this was, I think, 1:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday. We get back. There's nothing left in the tank. No podcasting, no working, no dreaming, no book outlining, like zero left in the tank. And I wake up Thursday morning and remember when I told you that people around me were sick? Well, friends, it snuck into my system too. And also like, yeah, of course it would, because not only have I mean, you can be around sick people and not get sick, but the stress and strain that I had been putting on my brain and body, of course I got sick. So Thursday I was like pitiful sick and I was sad, and I was sad for the dog. I was sad for me. I mean, it was just pitiful. And then Friday rolls around. I'm still coming out of it, recovering a little bit, and I just let the damn retreat go. So now, circle back. Expectations, listening, and trust. Where did I go wrong? Well, everywhere. I didn't start listening until the pressure was so great that I couldn't hold it anymore, and then I let it go. I think a lot of the tension that I was experiencing, and I'm talking about myself because I think sometimes when we talk in sort of vague concepts or take broad strokes, it's easier for me to see myself in a specific story that someone shares. And so what I hope is that whether or not you've had an experience exactly like this, or you can't really relate to this exact story, but you can relate to the feeling, that is my intention for sharing the story. But yeah, I didn't trust what was happening in the moment. because I was still wrapped up in the story of what I wanted the week to be. Also, I wasn't honest with myself, which is, I think, another facet of trust. I wasn't honest with myself about what I was really expecting to be able to do. And so now this leads me to the exploratory questions. When do you let it be different? When do you let the situation you find yourself in and the beautiful plan you have for you, like when do you let those just be? For me, in terms of like answering this question, it's like I've had a lot of clients recently who have gone through major shifts in their marriages. When do you let it be different? I think a lot of what keeps us in maybe a place, a relationship, a job, a plan that is no longer working is we're holding on to the hope of what it could be. And we're more invested in the hope of what it could be than acknowledging the truth of what is. And also trusting how we're feeling. Because what I have experienced is that when I'm moving in pursuit of a plan, even if it's hard or challenging or presents challenges, moving forward in that direction and maintaining the integrity of my original plan makes sense. If I'm feeling like, this is more, I think, going back to the trust part of trusting how you feel, the pursuit of the thing, the effort doesn't completely erase the joy or the fulfillment or the enthusiasm for the thing. I'm not avoiding it, procrastinating. I'm not critical of myself as much, or like the things that I fall to, I'll say the less healthy behaviors that I can fall into. They aren't as present because I'm still moving towards something that is fulfilling something for me. When that is not the case, and I'm just trying to essentially make a bad thing work because I can't admit it to myself yet, what I feel is tired, drained, strained, burnt out. It's like pushing against a wall, convincing myself that I can make that wall move an inch. Like the whole room would be a better room if I could just push this wall out an inch. So I keep pushing the wall as opposed to it's like, well, this is the room. Like this is the room. That is what's happening here. And I think, again, going back to trust and listening, I know, and we all know, everyone listening knows, you know the difference between doing something hard, like a really like satisfying workout, or having a tough conversation with a loved one that on the other side, it's like you can breathe a little deeper, you can take a deeper, fuller breath in. It's the effort that feels good. And I don't necessarily mean good as easy or good as fluffy, but it's satisfying good versus that fidgety, flop sweaty, tense pursuit of trying to jam something in. And that is undeniably what I was doing that I couldn't see clearly. And so how do you know when you need to let it be different? I think it's when, to make it the most simple response ever, when it stops feeling good in that whole holistic, satiated type of good. And then how do you know if it's a good plan? Because let me tell you, my plan, it was a good plan. Now, not good in terms of being able to be executed in the time that I thought I would be able to do it, but it was a nice plan. I think that the way that you know if it's a good plan is how do you feel in the planning of it? That was a big swing and a miss for me. I was coming out of a place where I was feeling anxious and like I was falling behind. So the formulation of the plan was flooded with these really high, lofty, ambitious expectations because I was trying to catch up. It was the story I didn't realize I was telling myself. And I can think about this in relationships or client stories where they find themselves in a job. They're like, how did I get in this job I didn't really want to be in? Or how did I end up in this marriage I didn't really want to be in? Or maybe I did really want it at the time, but how did I lose my way? And again, each individual experience can make for a very different story. But I think where you are coming from, where you are emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, like where you are in terms of how full do you feel, how fulfilled do you feel, how satisfied are you in your own life, you're going to be beginning this new process, this new journey, or this new relationship. You're going to be coming into it with a different need. There's the subversive needs that maybe you're not clear on, and the very overt, like obvious needs that you can see. But I think where you're starting makes a big, big, big difference. To bring it to, I think, a more simplistic, probably overly simplistic, but sometimes it's just easier to remember. I think how you feel before you begin, how you feel when you make the plan, and how you feel in the process of executing the plan gives you crucial information that let you know, is this plan a good plan? Do I need to abandon the plan or revise the plan? I'm saying this very humbly acknowledging that I did none of those things in the story that I just shared. It wasn't until I was holding a deceased beloved pet that I finally started to unravel all of the BS that I had been feeding myself previously. So this is not an expert position. This is just an experienced position. The other thing too, and this goes back to trust, and this, I hope this doesn't read as toxic positivity. It's just something I believe. Just to clarify, a belief is just a thought we think over and over again, but it is something I believe. It always has a way of working out. And when I lose the trust that the situation is always working out for me, even if it doesn't work out in the way or the time or how I thought it would, it does. I just need to give it a little bit more time or let go of controlling it so tightly. What's really beautiful, actually, it was Sunday afternoon, the weekend after my retreat, and I found myself in a quiet, still experience with my journal and my book and nature and some coffee. My husband and my daughter were in another room and they were laughing and just being adorable together. And I finally felt the feeling that I had been trying so hard to carve out the week before. It just came in a different package. It fit in a different time slot than I had tried to slot it in. That's how deep the controlling side of me can go. It's like, I can plan freedom and fun. Oh God. That's what I did though. But I found myself there, and I think that sometimes that is what happens. It's like life is what happens when you're busy making plans. And then sometimes when you just surrender the goddamn plan, you find yourself in the place you really wanted to be. It's just the way you got there was different. I took a really long detour to get where I wanted to go. The only way, I'll say the litmus test or the gauge that helped me know that was how I felt. It wasn't in the thinking. It wasn't in the doing, actually. It was in the feeling of it. This was the feeling I was trying to create for myself. So I think the sweet spot is to be clear on what you want, how you want to feel, and why you want it, why it matters to you, not how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. I'm saying this wholly and completely as a reminder for myself, as well as sharing this with you, to hold your plans lightly. Hold your plans lightly. I think that sometimes we can make potential become a pedestal that we're trying to uphold to, the potential for ourselves, the potential for the people we love, right? We kind of live in a self-improvement culture that just is constantly trying to make things better. And I think a lot of my anxiety is like a marble balancing on a teeter-totter. It's like, where does self-acceptance meet growth? Self-acceptance meet growth. Self-acceptance meet growth. And I think it just kind of swings back and forth. Yeah, I think that's it. So, listening, expectations, trust, hold your plan lightly, remind yourself why you want it, because how it actually takes shape. If you know why you want it and you know how you want to feel, you're more likely to feel your way to a place that feels successful as in feeling good, because that's, and I guess in terms of mental and emotional health, that's the ultimate goal, is to feel good. Otherwise, why would we do it? But yeah, hold your idea lightly, hold your plan lightly, and let it go when it stops feeling good. And trust yourself that you know the difference. You're not lazy if you shift and change your plan because it stops feeling good. I know that avoiding those self-critical thoughts or not wanting to feed into that self-critical narrative is a big part of what keeps me stuck sometimes. And you're getting stuff done all the time. You're accomplishing more than you know. You're not lazy. Sometimes you're just tired and you need a nap. I know that's probably what would have served me a lot better and maybe prevented me from getting that stupid cold. But alas, I digress. Well, friends, it is so fun to be back. It is so fun to be talking to you and connecting with you in this way. Your time, your care, and your attention here in this space, it is such a treasure to me. I hope that you feel honored, and I hope that you can learn and laugh from my mistakes, and we can continue to grow together. If you have any questions you would love to send my way, I would love to dive in and dish and continue a conversation that we can uniquely have through the podcast space. You can email me at danielle@danielleireland.com. You can also rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. It's a great way to interact with me and a great way to support the work. Just helps other people get connected with me. And it feels good to see your comments too. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you, if you haven't already, I hope from this point forward, you have an amazing, incredible day.